The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHG. It is Sunday, the 13th of July, 2025. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President and CEO of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommey. Right, Mary. Well, first story up is causing a bit of a drama in the mummy groups. But before we see this, I actually blame the press for that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So Reuters here, Moderna gets full US approval for COVID shot in at-risk children 6 months and older. Moderna receives full US FDA approval for this COVID-19 vaccine Spikevax in children aged 6 months to 11 years. And these are for children at increased risks for COVID-19 disease, as I'm reading what they're saying here, by the way. Now, Moderna says, and this is important, Moderna itself says, you and your child should not get Spikevax if you've had a severe allergic reaction after a previous dose of Spikevax or any Moderna COVID-19 vaccines or to any ingredients in these vaccines. And myocarditis is listed as a risk. It's like seizures are in the MMR, like it's in bold writing. It's just like, hey, you could get myocarditis if you get this shot. So yes, I get why everybody's freaking out. I really do, because we don't want these on the shot. But it is, the press is saying, oh, it's approved it for everyone. They're missing the bit out that it really is for children that are apparently at risk, which are probably the last people that should have it anyway, Mary.
I agree with that. Yeah, Children's Health Defense's position, Polly, is that these products should be off the market. They are not safe on a universal basis. And this is just Moderna trying to get into the market. And Moderna is understandably upset that Secretary Kennedy changed the designation from recommended to shared decision making. So it's really up to the physician and the patient, or the parent in this case for these children. What this is really about is changing this has already been on the market for children. It's changing the designation from emergency use authorization to fully licensed. And so that's a major sort of shift in terms of the FDA's level of approval. But I wouldn't recommend personally, I wouldn't recommend that any child get any COVID shot now. It seems completely unnecessary and the risks outweigh the benefit. But this is a new market entry and it has already been on the market, but as an EUA rather than a licensed product.
But it's so interesting that Moderna itself, if you bother to read not even that small print anymore.
They have to do that now, Polly, as a licensed product. And I think part of what has happened is they have to now list myocarditis as a risk. It's still, I don't know that we still have the full story on what's in these things. I don't think we do.
So here's the defender with Michael Novodakis, RFK Jr., hit with lawsuit over changes to COVID vaccine policies for kids and pregnant women. The 42-page lawsuit, filed on Monday by 6 medical groups, alleges the changes to the COVID-19 vaccine recommendation are baseless and uninformed and place pregnant women and children at grave and immediate risk. The lawsuit's lead plaintiff, the American Academy of Pediatrics, lists Merck, Sanofi, and Moderna among its donors. I mean, I bet it does. But good luck with the science on that one. I mean, bring it on. Come on.
Exactly. This is actually, Polly, I think they've made a tremendous blunder. I really do. Now they have to show a court of law, real scientific evidence that these products are safe. And we know that really doesn't exist. What this industry has always relied on in the past was authority, the CDC, the FDA, HHS. And now that's basically been removed from them. And so they imagine somehow, I think, that they can still rely on the authority of the AAP or, the American Medical Association. And I think they're going to have, I think it's going to be really, really important to watch, Polly, because I actually think that this could be, in some ways, the showdown that we've been looking for. People have to put, sworn testimony. If it's false information, they can be criminally charged. So I actually am really excited that they brought this case, charging that the Kennedy administration had no evidence. There may actually, Polly, be counterclaims here against these institutions. So this is going to be very, very interesting.
It is. Well, let's find out a little bit more about the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. This is a little video. It will drop into the show notes. But it's Suzanne Kressly, and she says vaccines are incredibly safe. She says HHS, FDA, etc., hasn't even looked at the data. She said ACIP was functioning for years very well with 17 highly qualified consultants, and they all looked at the data and they decided what was best for the public. But now they've replaced with 7 to 8 people with way less experience on the science and how to interpret the data. She says every time someone raises doubt, this impacts the parents and their decisions to vaccinate their children. So wow on that, Mary. So basically, this is the person that's doing the lawsuit against Bobby with everybody. And you should listen to this video, everyone, because quite frankly, she knows not what she says. Big time.
Well, exactly right, Polly. Exactly right. She's incredibly, she's listening to propaganda. She's uneducated. She's totally uneducated. And these people they're walking into a trap, Polly. They're walking in. That's what I think.
But every time someone raises doubt, so if you question it, then this is really bad because that impacts people vaccinating their children. So you're not allowed to question it. Brenda Belletti, the lawyer leading the lawsuit against RFK Jr. Over the COVID vaccines, the one we just talked about. This lawyer used to work for Moderna. It's Richard Henry Hughes, a former vice president of Moderna, is the lead lawyer now representing the plaintiff suing HHS Secretary RFK Jr. So it's basically Big Pharma having a go.
But it's even better than that, Polly. He also used to work for Merck. And he's on the board of Vaccinate Your Family, which is the main pharma front group promoting vaccines. So this is a showdown, Polly. This is a showdown. This is going to be very, very interesting.
Vaccinate Your Family is such a ridiculous name because we all did vaccinate our families. That's why we are sitting here doing what we're doing now.
Well, it used to be called the Immunization Action Coalition. And before that, it was Every Child by Two. And it keeps changing its name. But, remember that it used to be just children that were subject to these compulsory mandates. And now post-COVID, of course, it's the whole family. So they want to get everybody in on the act, Polly. And we're definitely spoiling their fun to say that there's any issue at all.
Okay, Michael Neverdakis in The Defender. Vaccine lobbyists deny calling Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a direct threat to public health. They declare support for Maha. A leading biotech industry trade group denied any knowledge of a document containing the minutes of an April the 3rd meeting, during which they criticized Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. James Linewiler, who said he received the document anonymously by a whistleblower, first went public with it on Tuesday. And of course, many of you who watch us know that we had him on Wednesday to explain everything.
Right. So we have every reason to believe that this document from this lobbying group Bio is authentic, although we don't know that for a certainty. And it's very disparaging towards Secretary Kennedy. And they are very clear that they want to spend $2 million to get him out of the job, ideally by September, to undermine him and to divide and conquer HHS. And it's pretty remarkable. So this article goes on to say that HHS says this is very concerning, that this lobbying group that has tax exempt status would be trying to dislodge a sitting member of the cabinet. And it quotes Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA head and now on the Pfizer board, as suggesting that the Make America Healthy Again movement is nothing but a cover for an anti-vaccine campaign. And their language was that they wanted to neutralize the cabinet official. So it's pretty interesting. There's also, this article kind of goes into some of the backstory, which is pretty interesting, that two major vaccine manufacturers, GSK and Pfizer, left the bio lobbying group at the end of 2024. And so maybe somebody from their operations leaked this, and this is sort of antagonism and hostility within pharma? We don't know. I mean, obviously, this document was not meant for public eyes. But as you point out, Polly, then Bio goes out and says, no, we're completely aligned with Secretary Kennedy and Make America Healthy Again, which is, it's nice to have that on the record.
This is Yahoo News reporting. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. swears mums are regularly thanking him for questioning vaccines. He says he cannot walk down the street without mothers swarming him to thank him for the work he has done in questioning the quality of the food supply and the efficacy of vaccines. There has been this deliberate information chaos, and we are going to change it all. Thank you, Bobby. And I'm sure he is swarmed. Of course he is. People are so grateful that he's looking at this.
He, you know, it's sort of like he's opening Pandora's box. You know, this has been closed for decades, and he's opening up these conversations about why are children so sick, right? If everything's wonderful, why is everybody sick?
Well, let's talk about wearables. So the first article is the Branston Institute. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. clarifies stance on wearables. Health Secretary RFK Jr.'s recent remark in a congressional hearing that he envisions every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years caused an uproar among his supporters and critics. Kennedy admitted he chose his words poorly. What I was trying to say is that I want this technology to be universally available as one of the ways people can get on top of their health, he explained. And just before you comment on that, we do have another one in the Defender with Josh Stileman, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Wearables and the Pitfalls of Hero Worship. Charles Eisenstein published a defense of Kennedy's statement that every American should be wearing a wearable within 4 years, arguing that critics engage in hysterical reactions in cancel culture. But Einstein's critique misses the deeper issue at stake and reveals a dangerous dynamic in the Maha movement. So there's those two articles for you guys to read.
They're both really good and interesting articles. We talked about this last week too, Polly. You know, Bobby's comments on wearables seemed, you know, startling. And some people thought, oh my God, has he lost his mind? You know, is he a zombie? Because we do know that these wearables pose real risks to privacy and to radiation. And so I thought it was a really good discussion. Charles Eisenstein, who'd worked on the campaign as one of Bobby's speechwriters, engaged him on the question and said, you know, that's not really what Bobby meant. And he gave quotes in that. And then Josh Stileman, also certainly a friend to CHD and the Maha movement, said, yes, that's great that Bobby's clarified, but we as a movement can't be engaged in hero worship. We can't say that just because, you know, we can't sort of say, okay, Bobby misspoke all the time. We have to hold him accountable like we would hold anybody accountable. And so we republished that because we agree that it's important to clarify if Bobby says something that seems really off message. It's important to clarify what did he really mean. Thanks to Charles on that. But Josh is also really right. We're not going to engage in, you know, deification of anybody. We have to hold our government officials and the medical profession and everybody else accountable. So we thought they were both really good things that you should read or know about.
Defender Brenda Belletti cuts to scientific journal publishing giant driven by cost, not content, HHS says. The Trump administration ended millions of dollars of contracts with Springer, Nature, citing concerns about junk science, exorbitant pricing, editorial bias, and Chinese influence. In response to criticism, HHS said the cuts had more to do with cost than content, and that NIH scientists will have continued access to all scientific journals.
So, Polly, I would think that it had something to do with both cost and content. So Springer Publishing is the publisher of the notorious journal Nature that published the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. And that was the total smokescreen that Fauci coordinated to undermine the lab leak hypothesis. And they called anybody who thought it was a lab leak basically a conspiracy theorist. So I think there's both cost and content issues here to be concerned about. But NIH scientists apparently were very worried. Oh my gosh, we want to be able to publish in these important journals. And Jay Bhattacharya, the head of NIH, sort of, you know, calmed people down and said, yes, you're still going to have access. You're going to be able to publish. And, you know, I think it's you know, certainly, Polly, the publishers in the medical space have been part of the pharmaceutical cartel. They really have been, because they basically get money directly from pharma. And so they do pharma's bidding. And so undermining those journals, at least with government funding, is an important step in making this more a free market and less a monopoly by pharma.
Okay, Michael Nevadakis in The Defender. Pfizer pushes deadline for study of myocarditis in kids and adults under 21. Pfizer launched a study in November 2022, but has not publicly released interim data, and now says the study won't be complete until November 2030. Some experts say the vaccine maker may be attempting to delay disclosure of data that could raise questions about the vaccine's safety. Isn't it a massive conflict of interest that Pfizer is conducting its own study?
Well, they're under obligation to do post-marketing surveillance, Polly. Once they came on the market, they were obliged to do that. I mean, this is, if they had good news to come out with, they would certainly do that. As our senior scientist, Karl Jablanowski, said, quote, "The delay will exacerbate the atrocity," unquote. I mean, it's not good news. It's bad news.
Defender Trump's nominee for CDC director clears committee vote, moves closer to confirmation. If confirmed, Suzanne Monterey would be the first CDC director to be voted on by the US Senate. Monterey will also become the first non-physician to lead the CDC in more than 50 years. And she's a huge concern to many in our movement, to be honest.
Yeah. Monterey had been serving as the acting head of CDC. She's somebody that Secretary Kennedy got behind in a big way after his first candidate, Congressman Dave Weldon, was not confirmed. It looks like she will now be confirmed, Polly. I think the main thing right now, I mean, she has background in bioweapons research or gain of function research. Some of her answers were pretty troubling in her confirmation hearing, as we covered before. But it looks like she's going to be confirmed. I think a big issue right now for work at HHS is just having somebody really in charge at CDC. It's problematic to have that really critical agency, without a director. So it looks like, to my mind, having gotten through the HELP committee, that she will be confirmed by the whole Senate.
AP News, American kids have become increasingly unhealthy over nearly 2 decades. A new study finds kids today are more likely to have obesity, chronic illnesses, diseases, and mental health problems like depression. The surprising part of the study wasn't with any single statistic. It was that there's 170 indicators, 8 data sources, all showing the same thing, a generalized decline in kids' health, says Dr. Christopher Forrest, one of the authors of the study, in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Well, nothing that we didn't know already, really, is there?
No, but Polly, what's really important about this is the Journal of the American Medical Association. This is sort of the heart of the medical establishment and the political medical establishment in the United States. Because Bobby is pushing this, because Bobby is talking about the chronic health epidemic and the chronic health of children, that's why they're doing this. And basically, Polly, they're having to acknowledge, you're right, Secretary Kennedy, we don't like you, but you are telling the truth that children are much sicker today than they were 2 decades ago. So it's an opening here that I see in some ways as positive.
Trial news here. Hospitals turned into killing centers during the pandemic. Will we learn from the mistakes? Public health leaders don't follow the data. They follow panic and centralized narrative control. Industry and academia. And the price was paid in hospital wards across America. Yeah, please watch VAX3. That's what we were talking about in VAX3. So it's good for people.
Yeah, this is like Daniel. I mean, it's a very good piece. We know this. It's what happened because of fear, censorship, and conformity. And what he said is, we do have to have a reckoning, or the next pandemic is going to happen. And so we're not there yet, Polly. I know you know that, but we're not there yet.
Okay, in The Defender here with Michael Nevadakis, sprayable COVID vaccine trial raises significant safety concerns. Several scientists and researchers questioned the design of the trial for the SVXGA1 nasal vaccine, suggesting the trial did not examine if shed materials can be spread to others. The trial also included just 72 participants and lacks an unvaccinated group. Of course they did. Of course. But we've been covering these nasal vaccine things for years. They kill. we've done stories on them.
So, yeah, I mean, again, our scientist, Carly Ivanowski, says this is just a bad idea. What's interesting, I guess this is like a phase 1 trial, Polly, very small, no unvaccinated control. Bobby Kennedy has said no new vaccine will be licensed without an unvaccinated control. They're planning to have the next clinical trial with 10,000 people. Let's see what happens. But these nasal vaccines, are absolutely going to shed, and they will be around people who will be harmed by it. So, if not the children themselves. You and I both know that children have died from these nasal vaccines.
And we know that the flu myth sheds, so why would this not? So, yeah. Okay, Brenda Belletti, defender. Florida blocks state agencies from using NewsGuard and other third parties to censor misinformation. Lawmakers inserted a provision into Florida's 2026 budget bill to prohibit state taxpayer dollars from being used to contract with these organizations like NewsGuard and to monitor media bias and misinformation. Reclaim the Net reported this, and critics say the provision could discourage constitutionally protected business activities.
Well, we don't want any government money going to engage in censorship, which is what this is. So I'm very happy to see this. Good for Florida.
Well, now we have some exciting news. We have a conference in November, 7th to the 9th of November this year in Austin, Texas, my hometown. So come on down, please. In the show notes is where you register. We'd love to see you. We've got some very exciting speakers that we'll be announcing over the coming months. And it would just be so nice for us all to get together. I'm sure I'll be doing stories and we'll be doing all the usual things that we normally do. So come down, meet us, and just become part of the Children's Health Defense family, which is what we're hoping those couple of days will do.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We didn't do one in 2024. There was just too much going on, especially with, Bobby Kennedy running for president. It was just too complicated. But we had a fantastic conference in 2024 in Savannah, Georgia. And we also had a great conference in Tennessee in 2023. And we're really psyched to be doing this one now in 2025. Especially in Austin, where Polly is. But we've already got many impressive speakers lined up, and we've got a great facility, and it's going to be a very exciting couple of days. So I do hope that people will join us. I hope you'll join us there.
And you get to meet the staff as well, because often you hear us saying, Lou, could you put the next slide up? And none of you know who Lou is. Well, Lou will be there.
Well, we're all going to be there if we can. We're a pretty big team, and we're really going to do our best to have as many of our staff there. And it's going to be a really exciting time. And it's been an incredibly exciting year, right? It's been a real year of change. And so by November, we will be looking back at what really happened in 2025. I think there will be a lot to talk about. So I'm really hoping that we'll have vendors there. We'll have some party kinds of things happening. It'll be really fun.
And some great information as well. There's some exciting news. It's a positive conference, I can tell you that. Well, now the other news is you heard from Brian Hooker and I on Friday that we're off to DC. So tomorrow we're all getting on a plane, flying up there. Mary, you'll be there as well.
I certainly will.
It's going to be an exciting day on Tuesday, and we are going to be live streaming on CHD TV. So sign up for your text.
Let's tell them what it is. So Senator Ron Johnson is the chair of the subcommittee, the permanent subcommittee on investigations of the Homeland Security Committee of the Senate. And he is having a hearing at 3:00 Eastern on Tuesday, July 15th, called Voices of the Vaccine Injured. And so I am proud that both Polly and Brian Hooker from CHD will be testifying. Also, Emily Tarcell, who's been involved with CHD over the years. And yes.
Crystal Accordingly, which many of you remember from Vax too. So Emily was in there with her daughter, Christina, who died from the Gardasil shot. And Crystal was in there with her beautiful boy, Corbin, who died at 14 months following vaccines.
And Polly, it's very interesting. I've heard from Senator Johnson that the ranking member, Senator Blumenthal, will have at least one or two people speaking. I believe that one will be from the Vaccinate Your Family organization. And that woman is the mother of a child who died from a so-called vaccine preventable illness, H1N1. So it's going to be a very interesting hearing, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's really the first time in 20 years that the Congress is dealing with vaccine injury. The last congressperson to really do that was Dan Burton in the oversight committee in the House of Representatives. So this is a real new moment.
I find it really extraordinary with these things that, a person can get up and talk about the injury or the death of their child, and people are just like, maybe it's 1 in a million or it's in your head. But someone from Vaccinate Your Family or something can get up potentially and say, well, look, vaccines have saved millions of lives. They've done this, and everyone accepts it. Where's the evidence? Because from what I can see, it's called nothing but death and destruction everywhere. But they somehow seem to get away with it.
Well, I don't know what she's going to say, Polly. I don't. She, like us, Polly, I think we don't want to be, I think we need to look for the common threads, at least on the surface. This is a parent who lost a 5-year-old child who's been called to testify about why she is so adamantly in favor of vaccines. So I think maybe there's common ground. I don't know, Polly, but I'm eager to be at the hearing next Tuesday and to hear you and Brian and all the others.
And we've always said that any child that dies, whether it's vaccine or illness, it's tragic.
It's tragic.
But our children have died from vaccines or are injured beyond belief. They are as important as the ones that have died from the illnesses. And that's what I think is missing. Well, anyway, so we'll be live on Tuesday. So we look forward to, and we're going to be playing Vax 1 on Monday, Vax 2 on Tuesday, and Vax 3 on Wednesday after the news to just to remind everybody that that's where we are at. And Vax 2 particularly important on Tuesday because that's really your voices. And you know what, Mary, as I said with Brian on Friday, is thanks to the people that came to the bus or come to us at CHD and either support us doing what we do and tell their stories, and that you're what's made us where we are now.
Oh my gosh, 100%. This is a grassroots movement, and it's really not a political movement. It's really a movement to change the way that we do business. It's really just to reinforce what should be our natural rights of bodily autonomy and informed consent. What has happened over the last 100 years to have these enforced mandates from the government for medicine just makes no sense, really. And I think we're coming to that point, and it's exciting. We still have quite a ways to go, but we've never been closer, Polly. We've never been closer in the United States than right now.
Exactly. All right, well, we're going to go to our Geoengineering report, and then we're going to go to our unvaccinated story of the day. I see that since we've been doing unvaccinated, when we were doing the dead babies and the autism, the trolls, dark side, whatever you want to call them, they left us alone. But put out the unvaccinated stories, and they are all over us on social media. They are very unhappy with us indeed. So thank you for those that have done their unvaccinated stories. They really are uplifting for us all to watch. So geoengineering, and then we're going to go to the unvaccinated story. Mary and I will see you next week, and I will be back with you on Thursday with Financial Rebellion. So I'll probably give you an update on how the last 3 days have been. But so stand firm, never settle, pray big, and Mary and I will see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
I'm Claire Dooley, you're watching CHD TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. Lightning storms with no rain, forests that ignite without warning. In this segment, we explore the rise in dry lightning events and ask, could atmospheric engineering be creating these volatile conditions? Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org reveals how ionized particulates and frequency manipulation may be sparking more than just concern.
I wanted to talk about dry lightning strikes, which you mentioned in your video, because we're seeing in Austin a crazy amount of these right now. What's the deal behind that?
Well, they're ionizing the atmosphere with electrically conductive particulates, and as those particulates interact in the atmosphere, it generates static buildup. So we have to have more dry lightning with an atmosphere saturated with these particulates. And again, you add to that the frequency transmissions, and this is where there's so many layers of insanity. So we know that in order to manipulate the particulates, they're using frequency transmissions. So the electrical conductivity of those particulates is essential to them. And we see, for example, hurricane manipulation, which is a fact. It's not speculation. We have the recordings of the transmissions maneuvering these storms at geoengineeringwatch.org. Your listeners can search, and we're coming into hurricane season now, so it's important people understand the degree to which they can manipulate these storms. If your listeners search geoengineeringwatch.org hurricanes, they'll find our actual real-time recordings of storms being manipulated, like Harvey in Texas, Helene recently, Ian. Again, we've done this numerous times. They do have that much power, but those electrically conductive particulates do spawn more lightning. And when we look at other layers of this insanity that most people are completely unaware of, Polly, for example, the atmosphere is filling with methane, and yes, it is a problem, and no, it's not just cow flatulence. That's another narrative. You've heard that narrative, right? We need to worry about the cow flatulence, right? So they use that narrative to divide populations.
Job number one is to stop using the sky as an open sewer for all of this man-made global warming pollution. And that's what's making the weather crazy and dangerous, leading to all of the consequences that are on the TV news almost every night now.
Because everyone loves to hate Al Gore, and Al Gore's a part of the problem. We agree with that, but that doesn't mean you ignore real threats because they've put an actor in this play that's intended to polarize the population. We still need to use our sense of reason. In the case of cows, livestock, cutting down forests to raise cows, that's definitely a problem. Cutting down forests to raise feed for cows, that's definitely a problem. But the cow flatulence methane scenario is simply a smokescreen, and the methane blowouts that are happening on Siberian tundra and the Arctic seafloor, that is an existential threat. Your listeners can search Siberian methane craters. They'll see images of these blowouts. They're bigger on the seafloor. So this methane is thawing. It tends to release in entirety. That's what the Bermuda Triangle situation is, Polly. The Bermuda Triangle is seafloor methane releases, entire fields of methane blow out, raise through the water column. And if there's a surface vessel there, a ship, boat, and it's above that plume as it's reaching the surface, it aerates the water, and that ship has no buoyancy. It's going to go to the bottom intact. That's what's happening. And they've been trying to systematically hide this for many decades. But that methane then goes into the atmosphere. It covers the planet like a layer of glass. It's 120 times more potent than CO2 at trapping gas over a 10-year time horizon. So what are they trying to do about that? To hide that or to slow it down? They're microwaving the atmosphere with opposing frequency transmissions. That's Project Lucy and Alamo. Those are acronyms. So I'm trying to point out that there's one layer of insanity on top of another, on top of another. Isn't this like the pharmaceutical approach again? Take this for that. Here's 20 side effects. Now you need 20 more pharmaceuticals. It's the same mentality, is it not?
And it's petrifying, to be honest with you.
It is. It should be. They're using the atmosphere as a giant physics lab experimentation, and we will also pay the price. And it's also a war zone now, Polly, as we have more and more friction between countries with opposing interests. Their former collusion and cooperation on these operations appears to be perhaps starting to turn into a battlefield.
We love hearing from you at CHGTV. We always are going through your emails and, sending them to each other and discussing the pictures you're sending and, whatever comments you're making. So please continue doing so. You can reach out to us at goodmorning@chg.tv. Thank you so much for watching the Geoengineering Report, and we'll see you next time on CHGTV.
The basic building blocks of climate engineering are to saturate the atmosphere with electrically conductive light scattering particles and polymers, particles like aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese. These particles are then manipulated with extraordinarily powerful radio frequency microwave transmissions that can heat the upper layers of the atmosphere like the ionosphere, that are used to create pressure zones that steer upper level wind currents, which then steer weather systems. These particulates, when they are manipulated with these frequencies, can literally move air masses. This is an integral part of climate engineering that is not known or being acknowledged by many. Extraordinarily powerful and dangerous radio frequency microwave transmissions.
Electromagnetic fields are energy sources, and they're going to be interacting with moisture in the air or our bodies or whatever. And therefore, it's not at all surprising that you're going to find some movement in relation to exposure of weather patterns to electromagnetic fields.
When you have things like HAARP that can send electromagnetic waves into the air column, if you send, lower frequencies, you can calm it all down and you can cool it. Or you can excite it and you can heat it up. So there's complete control of temperature within the environment.
In 1985, Bernard Eastland applied for patents. Many claim that these patents have become the blueprint for HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
HAARP is a large antenna where we beam radio frequency energy up into the upper atmosphere.
Applications discussed in the patents included destroying missiles. Communications control and disruption were included. There were some other ideas, both to possibly modify weather.
What we can do with an antenna is change the portion of the sky into which we insert the energy.
HAARP's combined antennae generate a focused billion-watt high-frequency radio beam, which penetrates the lower ionosphere and interacts with the currents of the auroral electrojet.
In certain applications, the military acknowledges that it can literally lift the ionosphere. And what they say is, it's not a problem, it's a short period of time, yet when you lift the ionosphere up, the lower atmosphere rushes in and fills that void, which changes localized weather patterns.
At its biggest size suggested, if you beamed it for an hour and a half, that would equal the energy in a hydrogen bomb.
HAARP is only one installation of perhaps 100 that are on that scale around the globe. You can create high-pressure domes. In the northern hemisphere, that creates a clockwise spin, just like the pulley. That allows them to steer the upper-level winds into nearly any configuration they wish. So the areas that are under that high-pressure dome fry. They fry. Take a look at that round bubble. Is that not telling? That's a high-pressure dome parked right over the top of us that ensures nothing can flow in. You would never see this meteorologically 20 years ago. Never.
When you have two things that have the same mechanism of action, one would expect that their effects would be either additive or more than additive, that being synergistic. So when we're talking about weather patterns, so you have fog, you have water droplets, you have water in the air. When those water droplets are irradiated with microwaves, they're going to do the same thing they do in our body. They're going to generate reactive oxygen species. And when nanoparticles are in that water, they're going to do the same thing they do in our body. They're going to generate reactive oxygen species. So at minimum, one would expect that these effects would be additive, with the possibility that it could be more than additive.
And if frequencies do that to particulates, again, what's it doing to us? What's it doing to the web of life? Given anything that's alive has water in it in some form or another, what's happening to us with this? And watch what happens to a flow of water when it's exposed to frequency. Very hard to believe, and when you feel that with particulates, the effect is even more profound. There's a radio frequency transmitter that, based on the signal transmission direction, is isolating precipitation and blocking out a whole section of precipitation. These are one of the radio frequency transmitters, and they're being put up all over the country, all over the world, wherever the grid power will support them. Again, you saw the radio frequency transmission carving out a 90-degree inside corner. That's the overall effect in the end. Completely unnatural. There's not a meteorologist that doesn't know this is going on. No chance. Many ask this question: can cyclones, can hurricanes be manipulated? The short answer is yes. Project Cirrus. the U.S. military has been engaged in hurricane manipulation programs since at least 1947. And these programs have been ongoing ever since, although the U.S. military denies it. They claim they stopped this research. That is a blatant lie. Geoengineeringwatch.org has captured film footage of the radio frequency transmissions being used to manipulate the atmospheric particulates sprayed by climate engineering operations in order to steer and direct hurricanes. They can be manipulated to a degree that few can comprehend. We have NASA satellite images available at geoengineeringwatch.org that show extraordinary atmospheric manipulation off the west coast of Africa, where cyclones in the Atlantic basin originate. There's no theory, there's no hypothesis, there's no conjecture. Cyclone manipulation is absolutely, positively being done.
Give us your names.
Kaz. Hi, Polly.
Johanna. Alana. Very pretty. Okay, so you both have children.
Yes, I've got two. I've got a 2-year-old.
This is two separate families, just in case you're wondering. They are not the same family. So you have how many children?
I've got 2 and 5 years old.
And you've got?
I've got 3, 5 and 1.5.
Now, have any of your children had any vaccinations at all?
No.
Yes, my daughter's had 2 tetanus boosters, and that's all.
So the DTaps?
She had the boosters only.
She boosted something she had never had before.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
All right, so let's start with you then. So, when you were pregnant, did you think you were going to vaccinate or not?
Well, I was actually just lucky enough. I can only assume now that I possibly would have just trotted along and done what I'd been told to do. But I was blessed enough to have a good friend whom I respect, who's got healthy children, raise awareness with me, and from that point on, while I was pregnant, I researched pretty heavily and spoke with doctors and other medical professionals and made the choice not to. Yeah.
So were you at any point afraid of the things that the people who vaccinate are afraid of, like that your child will die of polio or diphtheria or the plague will come back or anything like that?
I have had moments where I've been concerned about it, but I've just been sure to go back and reconnect with people I respect, people who I know who have done a heap of research, and actually professional people as well. Obviously, I've met people with vaccine-injured children, which in those times really reassures me that I'm certain I've made the right decision. And obviously also I make sure that I read up on how to heal my child from these illnesses that I had as a kid and empower myself to make sure that I can, and then I will, and I do.
And also talking to my generation who actually got measles, mumps, rubella, shingles, chickenpox, and we survived.
Yep, so did I. I'm here with 2 unvaxxed kids.
All right, so how's the health of your... No, wait, let's talk about the fact they did get a vaccine. What happened there?
Well, actually, there was I was Boxing Day. I still remember to the day, some years back when my daughter was little, and there was on our New Zealand Herald, which is our main national newspaper, they had a big scary story about a child who'd gotten tetanus, and my father, who reluctantly supported me in my decision not to vaccinate, was very concerned about tetanus where we live, and the fact that there's a lot of perhaps rusty old metal. Our backyard, if you like, was used as a dumping ground. Contacted me, and I had been unsettled about it, and I got permission, if you like, from the vaccine awareness people, that she could have this done only, and so that's what I did. And I went along and got one, and about 6 months later, they told me to come back a month later, and I went back 6 months later and got another one done. And at that point I had some good people I could talk to, and realised that for me, I feel it was a mistake, but it's done now, and I've now learnt ways to heal tetanus, and
sure.
Not heal tetanus, but look after wounds and do good wound care and things like that, so she won't be having any more, that's for sure.
Is there anything that would make you vaccinate your children?
Not with the knowledge I've got now, no.
Okay, and what about you? You've 3 children that are totally unvaccinated.
That's right, yeah.
Did they have even the vitamin K?
No.
Wow, how did you get away with that?
My midwife was a home birth midwife and was really supportive, and I did a lot of research when I was pregnant with my first son and just decided not to do it.
And what made you decide that that was the best route for you?
Basically, when I got pregnant, I just began to sort of question everything because I had this beautiful being growing inside me, and I just wanted to make sure I did the right thing and didn't just follow along because that's what everyone expected me to do. So basically anything that was going into his body, I was going to be making sure I knew what it was and if there was any pros and cons. So I just decided against the vitamin K and just made sure that I focused on breastfeeding to support him when he was little. Yeah.
And were you scared that your children would get?
No, I wasn't scared, no.
Why not?
I just felt confident, and I'd done a lot of research, and I'd spoken to my sister-in-law who had one of her really good friends who was vaccine injured, and just speaking to her. And yeah.
Do you both see vaccine injury as you go into the supermarket or just walking around? Do you see the autism and the injury you're around? Do you see the inhalers and the allergies?
Definitely allergies.
But do you homeschool, you two?
No.
No, we don't.
You go to school.
But I in my job,
tell us what you are.
I'm in a job. I'm a children's librarian, and I've definitely seen quite an increase in autism in recent years. I've always been involved in children's literature and children's reading and books. It's a passion of mine, and so I've had a lot of contact with children, and I've really noticed an increase in autistic children in particular, but also just in the daycare and in my children's daycares and kindies and things like that. There's all these allergies and food allergies, and you can't eat this and you can't have that. Yeah.
Do you guys have food allergies?
No, my kids eat everything.
Do they get ear infections?
No. Xavier's had like 1 or 2 ear infections, but
my son was rubbing his ear the other day like this, and he was like, "Ooh!" And my cousin, bless her, she said, "Oh, he might have an ear infection." So I put some olive oil actually and chopped up garlic, which might sound a bit witchy, but I did it anyway. And his ear was fine the next morning, so maybe
that's a little bit quacky.
Yeah, it's a bit quacky, but it worked. Well, maybe he didn't have an ear infection, but no, not many ear infections in our house anyway.
And what about, do any of your children have signs of autism?
No.
No.
Do they bang their heads on the floor and the walls?
No.
Do they line things up in a long line, and if you try and pull them away, they scream and headbutt you and throw their arch their back and scream for 24 hours non-stop?
No.
Do they have diarrhea all over the house and just smear it all over the walls?
No.
That's because your kids are not vaccinated. It's the best gift you can give your children. And you've seen as many injury as we have here. You guys, it's the same story. Your story is not unique because it's the same story as every unvaccinated story that we do.
Yeah.
You are such good mummies. And we are too. We got lied to. That's the difference, you guys.
Shocking.
Yeah, it's sad, and we've got injured children beyond belief, and there's death around the world beyond belief. So you two, seriously, you should just give yourselves a massive pat on the back, because you've given your kids a really good future. They won't have to worry like ours.
Thank you, and he's hoping that lots of you don't do it, because it fucking sucks. And
I think people are scared. They're scared of CPS will take my child away. They're scared of what others might think. They've got all these. Yeah. Literally, if you watch these stories and you still vaccinate, there is something wrong with you. I would love to have seen just one of these stories. You can tell I'm getting tired and pissed off, can't you?
Yeah.
Watch out, we got a Q&A coming up. There's no Dr. Suzanne, there's no Brian Hooker, there's no Andy Wakefield, there's no Dale Bigtree. It's Polly Tommey in New Zealand, and I'm not in a good mood, just so you know. You though, make everything worth what we're doing, because there was one person who was going to, and it doesn't matter you guys because you're never going to know who this is, so I'm not ratting this person out, but he was scared to come on because he didn't want to boast about the health of his unvaccinated child. And I told him, how happy are we for the unvaccinated, healthy unvaccinated? Supersonic happy for you.
Thank you.
There's no jealousy, there's no boasting, we're just so happy because it validates as well the crap that's happened to our kids.